Welcome back to the Not Yet Adults podcast. This, of course, is a podcast with my friend Collin Geffrey and myself, Eric Zayas, where we talk about what it's like after graduation, becoming an adult, and figuring things out for ourselves.
Very true. Or trying to figure it out for ourselves. I don't know if we're ever totally there, but we're doing what we can.
Yeah, I feel like trying is a good operative word for that.
Trying, falling, and then trying again, just kind of documenting the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Eric, how's your week going, buddy?
Pretty good. Just working and trying to make time to hang out with friends. Actually, I have a couple friends I want to shout out. Shout out to Andy and Malik, who I hung out with last night as of this recording. My friend Andy just got his motorcycle endorsement, and so we hung out and had a few drinks and talked, and it's good to spend time with friends. And
now, to me, someone who knows nothing about motorcycles, is that like a motorcycle license, or what does that mean?
That's, to my understanding, what it was. It's basically a test you take that proves your competency driving a motorcycle. And also, I believe it helps with insurance because, from my understanding, your insurance goes up when you're trying to have motorcycle insurance, so an endorsement helps with that or something to that effect. But yeah, it also just proves to, like, obviously to law enforcement that you're smart enough to operate something as potentially dangerous as a motorcycle on the road.
See, I was worried about that for a second because you started it off with, yeah, we got together and he got his motorcycle thing, and so we had a few drinks. I was like, oh no, this story is going in a really bad way. This is bad. But no, I misunderstood.
Yeah, we weren't operating the motorcycle. He didn't even have it that day, but that was the reason for the celebration. And yeah, it's a pretty good time. Do you find time to hang out with friends on the regular?
Not as often as I should, and that's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Is I feel like, you know, when I was in high school or even at PLU, like there was stuff going on so often. You were just spending time with people all the time, and you didn't even really have to think about it. You were just around your friends so much that you got that time in. And lately, for me, like I have. There's a lot of people I'm friendly with, but here in Spokane, I could probably count on one hand the people who I'm like actually friends with, that I actually consider to be friends. And I haven't really hung out with any of them at all this summer, just because I've been, working so hard on videos and job applications and stuff. And that's been, I don't know, kind of weird. Because like I know that I need to be putting time into these relationships and hanging out with people, but it's also just feels like there's not enough hours in the day. So I don't know. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's another thing like I found interesting after PLU or growing older and becoming more of an adult is that you feel like, oh, when I'm done with school or when I'm done with X, Y, and Z, I'll have more time to hang out with friends. And then you get to that stage and all of your friends have jobs and other responsibilities. And it feels like you're hanging out with them about the same amount or maybe even less because scheduling issues and other various adult responsibilities and also like relationships. All of my friends, of course, are dating. Some of my friends from high school that I don't really communicate with as much anymore, I would see on Facebook and they're like married, having kids. So a lot of people our age are getting to that point in life where they're like developing families and doing like major career moves and moving away. And it's interesting seeing people that are around the same age developing quicker or slower as far as like adulthood is concerned, and how you like find it's so easy to drift apart from people who are like accelerating through life or slowing down through life.
Well, and what's hard about that is it's not that these friendships don't mean anything to you anymore. It's just that, those things you mentioned, whether it's your career, your relationships, or whatever, it's really hard to put friends above those things.
Absolutely.
They just, those things are, I feel like they take more of your, waking hours of what you're thinking about. Those are occupying your head more often than not, and they take more work and time and effort. And at the end of the day, it's really hard to maintain friendships on top of, the growing responsibilities of getting older. And, you mentioned, or maybe it was me that mentioned, I don't know, but at college, how that was kind of different, or in high school, it was kind of different. And I feel like, particularly on the late night team, which is where you and I met, it didn't really feel like it was forced because our work, quote unquote, was with our friends. And so whenever we were working on late night, we were also hanging out with friends, and it just felt like we were killing two birds with one stone. But these days, like, it doesn't feel that way at all because obviously, you and I are working and stuff.
As far as late night, for the people who are listening to this who don't know what that is, late night was the name of a variety show Colin and I worked with while we were at Pacific Lutheran University that starred Sam Ellison, the amazing Sam Ellison. And it was just basically felt like a group of friends who met up at least once a week to discuss plans for the show that we'd have every couple of months.
Or if it was the 2 weeks leading up to show, it was much, much, much more than once a week, yeah. But I mean, I think about that a lot because that was an environment where we could work and hang out with friends at the same time.
They really went hand in hand.
Yeah, it did. And like I've had jobs before where I worked with people that I liked, but I didn't really think of them as friends because it was very much a professional setting. And I felt like late night was kind of right on the border there between professional and unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt more like fun than it did like work. But I mean, you're working at Lowe's right now, and I don't mean to like put you on blast or anything, but do you feel like the people there are your friends, or are they your coworkers, or is it a little bit of A, a little bit of B?
I feel like a lot of my coworkers I'm friendly with, but I don't really hang out with any of them outside of work. So it's like while we're there, we're friends in the sense of like helping a customer or putting an item away. We're talking and being friendly, but it's not the kind of relationship where it's like after I clock out, I say like, oh, do you want to have dinner or have a drink? It's just kind of like at least with the people I work with, we kind of go separate ways. And also with places like Lowe's and really any like place of work, people are in and out. Mm-hmm. Like some people like only work for a certain amount of months and then leave, or some people get new jobs. And so over the years I've been there, it's been hard to like keep relationships since I don't hang out with them after work, because then they like quit or like move to a different department within the store, and then I cease talking to them at all.
The half-life of how long they're actually going to be around you is so short that it's like, okay, well, I'll be nice to them, but it's not really worth putting the effort into maintaining a friendship.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's a good, friendly environment with the people I'm working with, and I'm very fortunate with that. But it's not the sort of thing where I'm like chumming with them like outside of that environment.
Yeah, I think I mean, for me, that was how high school was like, if while I was a freshman or sophomore, you would ask me how many friends do I have in high school, I'd probably say like 30 or 40 or something like that. And the number of those people that I actually have talked to after the fact is like maybe 5 or 6. And that's just because when you're sharing the same space with someone and you see them all the time, it's easy to think of them as friends because they're the people that are occupying your time. And then suddenly you take away those kind of that I guess forced intimacy is kind of a way to put it, of like you have to be around each other, and so you might as well get along. But once you take that away, oftentimes you're like, oh wow, maybe we weren't friends, maybe we just occupied the same space for a while.
Yeah, and that occupying the same space is something like I'm definitely gonna miss with regards to school. Like the one thing I liked most about school was that it was an environment where I was around people my own age, oftentimes with very similar interests. So it was very easy to build like friendship relationships because there was like a scheduled time where I'd meet with a group of like at least 20 other people my age who had a commonality in the subject of the class at the very least, and then talking with them and finding other interests. It was very a streamlined way of like, it felt like an organized friendship place, you know what I mean? With like education as like a part of that.
Well, and like when you go meet people, just random people, it can take a while and it may never happen that you find you actually have something in common. But with college, you are immediately put into an environment where you have things in common with the people around you. And like for you and I, who are, a bit more introverted and maybe not the most outgoing people in the world, like that's kind of nice, at least it was for me in a way, of I didn't really have to go seek anybody out. Just at any given point, there were people around me who I knew I shared things in common with. And that was kind of cool because it helped to build relationships and friendships that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah, and now that that's like over, it's kind of there's like a sadness to that, in the sense that I know that if I want to build like new friendship relationships, I really have to like go out of my way to meet like strangers that I have no basis of a relationship with, no like nothing that would like break the ice.
And that's so hard because it feels so manufactured. Like, it doesn't feel organic. It's just like, hey, what book are you reading? Or, hey, you want to get a drink or whatever. I don't know. Feel like for me in particular, it's really hard making new friends because I mean, first of all, I'm not going out to social places, but I'm such a, I guess, workaholic, and I get so into the projects I'm working on that unless I happen to be working with someone on a project at that point, I'm probably not even going to consider them as someone I could be friends with because that's just not how my brain works.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got like focus so much on your work that takes priority. And it's kind of like you were saying before, like when you're juggling like the projects you're working on and like friends, certain things take priority over friends. And even though you regard those friends with such importance, because you have so many other things that you think are like more important, your friends who are important to you have to kind of go down on the totem pole as far as priorities are concerned. And it kind of sucks.
It's not that you don't care about them anymore. It's just they kind of have to go on the back burner so you can focus on some other things. For you, when you think about like your best friends, is it the people you talk to the most often, or that you've known the longest, or that you hang out with the most, or like what's the factor in terms of how good a friend you have is?
Well, it definitely isn't the people I talk to the most because this is a strange thing about me. I don't text very often or talk with people very often, and so I don't keep in contact on a day-to-day basis with a lot of my friends, which I think sounds kind of strange.
I don't think so. I don't think that's that strange, honestly.
I just think of like, for some people who like text their friends like constantly or like are always calling people or like messaging on Facebook, that might sound strange. But the way I work is the people I hang out with, my core group of friends, are people I've been hanging out with for years and years and years. And so like, even though I won't talk to them on a day-to-day basis, they can like message me and say, hey, well, are you doing something this weekend? And then I'll like just like I will move plans for them if I had other plans, provided it's not like work or something I can't move, and like hang out with them, and we'll just like catch up in person. And it's kind of cool in that way because since we haven't been talking very often, we have a lot to talk about.
That's exactly it. I'm so glad you said that because like, have you ever gotten into that situation where like you meet someone new or whatever, and for one reason or another, you're texting like all the time? Pretty soon you get to the point where you're like, I just don't have anything to talk about with this person because we're talking so often. I'm out of steam. There's just nothing here. But when you let it breathe for a second and you talk to someone once a week, like we do with this podcast, or, you know, once a month or even once every few years, then there's so much there that you can just have this organic, doesn't feel forced, just nice catching up conversation.
Yeah, there's at least you have a lot of material of subjects to like discuss because you haven't been keeping tabs on each other as much.
Yeah, I have a buddy here in Spokane. His name's Cole, and we joke about it every time we see each other because, honest to God, almost on the dot, we'll hang out like once a year, and we won't talk in between, and we won't keep tabs on each other. It's just about once every year. We're like, hey, we should go get coffee, or hey, we should hang out for a couple days. And it's so cool because it's that kind of friendship where it just picks up right where it left off. And it doesn't feel like any time went by, and there's no awkwardness or guilt for not having talked because we're both busy, but we can just pick up, you know, right where we were a year ago. And I feel like that's really special when you have those friends that you don't necessarily have to check in all the time, and you can just kind of, you know, catch up again.
That reminds me of this, my best friend, or one of my best friends, I should say. I don't know if I have a best friend, is a man named Ryan, who I used to go to junior high with. And then after junior high, we went to different high schools rather. And I didn't talk to him for years. And then out of the blue, he like messaged me. It might have been on Facebook or something, and wanted to hang out. And I remember being hesitant and talking to my mom about it and saying, I don't know if I should meet up with him because I haven't talked to him in years. And I feel like we've kind of drifted apart and like are two different people now. And she was like, well, you might as well like try hanging out with them and see, like, for all you know, it could be like no time has passed and you don't lose anything by trying. And so then I went and visited his house, and we just immediately went back into the old like friendship dynamic, and it was amazing and refreshing, and it reminded me of what like a real friendship is, because since that relationship, the friends I had at high school, I don't really keep in contact with them now because they weren't necessarily always the nicest people. And they were in ways kind of like, I felt kind of like using me, not like in any like serious devious ways, but they were just kind of like, I don't know, they were kind of like bullies in a sense, but because they're only people I hung out with, I called them my friends. And now like in hindsight, I think back to those times and think like those weren't real friends. They were just people that I hung out with that were jerks generally, not all the time, but like then I hung out with Ryan after not having hung out with him since junior high for years, and I was like, oh, this is like what a real friendship was, and it was a refreshing feeling. And so since then we've like kept in contact, even though sometimes we live far apart. And there was even a time when he like moved in to live with me for some time, and yeah, since then, since we reconnected, we became like genuine friends, and it made me rethink all the like current friendships I had. And so it was cool. It was definitely one of the best examples of like having not talked to someone for a while, meeting up with them, and it's like no time has passed and we're just back to being like friends again. And so I think he's the longest friendship relationship I've had, and it's one of the strongest because it's been so long.
Kind of on with the shoe on the other foot a little bit. Have you ever had that experience where you haven't talked to them in a long time and you do meet up again and you realize that you're just totally different people?
Not really, because I haven't really done that. I haven't really reconnected with people I haven't talked to in a while with a lot of people. So I don't really have an example of one that like we met up and we're totally different people. So not really. There's a few people that like that I haven't talked to in like years and years and years, and will try to contact me and try to like meet up, but like that doesn't happen very often, and it's just like once in a blue moon. And I'm the kind of person where I'm just like, I know there's certain people in my life that like I know I don't want to reconnect with, because I like think back to how I hung out with them and not have like the best memories. Ryan is an example of a person I had like really good memories with, but I was still hesitant because so much time has passed. But I don't have a lot of examples of like reconnecting with people after a while.
I mean, there's that idea of nostalgia, right? Of like you look back on what used to happen, and you're like, oh, those were the good old days. I should get back in touch with them, or we should be friends again. And sometimes like it is just taking that gut check moment of like, wait a minute, do I actually want to start talking to this person again? Do I really want to like go back to this? And like you said, in high school, a lot of our relationships maybe aren't as healthy as they should be. You know, it's sometimes you do have to have that moment of like, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe this isn't, the right move to be making here.
Yeah, you got to be careful not to like, this is the right word, but it's a word that I think you'll understand, and I think the audience will understand what I mean. You don't want to like romanticize past relationships with friends, not in the sense that like it was romantic, but in the sense that you may think back to the friendship and only remember like the good parts, or only focus on the good parts and not really focus too much on the like the things that weren't right, or the overall relationship and how it might not have been the healthiest friendship for you. And you might think, oh, well, I haven't talked to this person in a while, or like, oh, this person wants to reconnect, and like, I like remember like the good parts, and like I definitely want to like reconnect with them. But sometimes some people I feel like in your life that you haven't talked to in a while, there's a reason for that.
No, I absolutely had that, like, especially growing up. There's this one buddy of mine that like we both just had, I think, very strong personality types. We just butted heads a lot, and I'd hang out with him a ton. And always I'd always spend the night at his place, or he'd spend the night at my place. And always about, I don't know, 16 or 18 hours into us hanging out, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is time. Someone needs to go home right now. We just need to take a break. And then about a week or two later, I'm like, oh man, we had so much fun last week. We need to hang out again. And then we would. And before long, he'd be like, oh yeah, that's why I got tired of this last time. You have that moment of like, when they're not right there in front of you, it's easy to just remember the good parts. But then suddenly you get right back knee deep in it, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, that's why this doesn't work. Yeah, I had a buddy, this is a few years ago. We were really good friends growing up, and then around like late middle school, early high school, he moved away out of the state. And a few years ago, he came to visit, and it was the first time he and I had, seen each other or even talked in quite a while. And he stayed with me for a little bit. And it was one of those things where like we were both friendly and we got along fine, but so much had happened in both of our lives since we had seen each other last. It just felt like we were two totally different people. And that was really hard because it was someone that I used to be really close with and used to have, all this in common with. And suddenly all this time had gone by and it was like we didn't even really know each other. And that was kind of a weird experience. Not because, we hated each other. We were going to like freaking kill each other or anything, but just because we didn't have that much in common anymore. And that's tough. I mean, I think maybe that's part of getting older too, is, you just go through different experiences in a shorter amount of time. But
yeah, and like you're living your life and growing as a person, and your personality's changing, and they're doing the same in their life. And so the memories you have of them are you and them being compatible as far as personalities. And then because so much time has passed, reconnect with them, personalities change. and you can be two completely different people, and it doesn't mean you hate each other. It just means like, oh, we're not compatible personalities anymore in the friendship sense.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the issue is, like you were saying, when you kind of romanticize what that relationship used to be, and then suddenly you reconnect and you're like, oh man, like there's the target, and I'm about 3 miles to the right over here. Like it's just so far away from what I thought this was going to be. And that's crazy. But I mean, whether it's a person or an idea or whatever, sometimes the first time you're exposed to it, you're just not quite ready to understand or appreciate it yet. And then later you can, or vice versa. Sometimes the opposite happens. I don't know. So how do you interact with your friends mostly these days? Is it, like you said, just kind of connecting in person every now and again? Or are there some friendships that you keep up regularly and talk to like once a week or whatever?
Yeah, I usually meet up with friends in like at a bar or something, or when we have like a few drinks, or we'll hang out at their like place and just like listen to music and talk and stuff. That's kind of generally the like social stuff I do with friends to like reconnect, and it's just like the drinking and the like listening to music isn't like a necessary part of it. It's just like something to do while we're talking. Yeah, very rarely do I do like sort of activities with friends where we go out and like I used to hike a lot.
Hiking's fun though if it's like mild hiking because you can still talk and have fun and just look around while you're doing it.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to do some more. I just need to like actually like get equipment and like commit instead of just say I want to do it and then not do it.
Just do it, Eric. Shia LaBeouf is sitting on your shoulder. Just do it. God. Yeah, I used to be really big on going to movies with friends, and then I realized I was either paying too much attention to the movie or too much attention to the friend, and neither really worked. And so now I either go to the movies with family, where I know I'm going to go home with them and talk about it later, or I just go by myself so I can focus on the movie. But every now and again, like infamously that you ducked out on, the late night team went to Infinity War together. And that was a really cool experience because like the movie was fine. I liked Infinity War, but seeing all the reactions your friends had of like, we're in this together. That was one of the few moments I've gone to a movie and I was like, I would not have had fun at this if I had gone on my own. But yeah, there is something, I don't want to say juvenile, but there is something, I guess, kind of juvenile about like having an activity that you're doing with your friends. Like, do you want to come over and we can play video games, or do you want to come over and we can go to the mall or whatever? That is very much like a preteen, like we're going to go do a thing together, as opposed to just, hey, let's hang out for the day. Let's just catch up or whatever.
Yeah, it's something I like miss from like my childhood memories. That's one of the most happiest times being a child, when like online games weren't a big thing except for the computer ones. You'd have a friend come over and you'd play Super Smash Bros. Together. You'd have a group of friends come over and all like play like the GameCube, and it was just like this like interesting community thing that I feel like doesn't happen anymore, at least not with my friends group. Usually I just meet up with them when we talk and drink and do like the adult version of that, but I don't have any friends come over and just play Super Smash Bros. On the GameCube anymore. It doesn't happen.
So, I mean, like talking about Super Smash Bros., do you feel like we don't play that with our friends anymore because our interests has like changed, or do you think it's because there's this stigma about it because that's what we did when we were kids?
I think it might be a little bit of both. Like getting together and playing video games seems like something that like children do, and even though like a lot of my friends do play games and stuff, it just seems like, I don't know, especially that particular game is like more targeted towards kids, whereas like other like computer games like shooters or whatever, like first person shooters, seem more adult. But also it's just like with like Super Smash Bros., for example, not a lot of my friends have played it in a while, and I haven't played it for a while, so we'd get together and like there'd be too much of like a skill gap. Like one person would be really good, another person really bad, and then it's just, I don't know, it's just not the same experience. Whereas when I was a kid and like all my friends that would come over were playing that game on the regular, since there was like a closer, there were definitely different levels of skill, but it was much closer, and so the game ended up lasting longer and being more competitive and like more of a fun experience. Whereas nowadays, like if I can get anyone to come over and play like a game like that, either I'll be really good and they'll be really bad, or vice versa, and then it's just like, I don't know, it's just not the same experience.
It's like having like a friend or significant other over while you're watching a TV show, and like they have no idea what's going on because they don't watch the show, and they keep asking questions. You're like, no, this doesn't work. I'm sorry. It's just not the experience we should have together. We're just on way two different planes.
Or you're just trying to show them a show that you like and they're like on their phone. You're like, no, you're missing it. You're not getting the full experience.
That's the freaking worst when you have like this show or this piece of content that you like emotionally have such a strong connection to, and you can tell it's just like going in one ear and out the other for the person. Because like I feel like you kind of have to be vulnerable to a certain extent when you do that, because you're like, this is something that really means a lot to me. It really resonates with me. And when it just doesn't connect with someone at all, and like it's not their fault, it's just because some things connect with people and some things don't. But that's the worst when something means a lot to you and you can tell the other person just couldn't care less. Well, Eric, we're kind of brushing up against that 30-minute mark. I feel like this is good. Like we're kind of getting into a rhythm where we're not going to like artificially lengthen it. It's like once we're done talking, okay, we're done. You know, we shoot for 30-ish minutes, but once we're done, we're done. And I think that's okay. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Not Yet Adults. I want to give a quick shout out to our listener and dear friend of mine, Lucas Hansen. He's listened to not only the first two episodes and been tweeting at us and stuff, but he also designed the Hey, It's Eric shirt from last episode, which is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That made me very happy.
Yeah, it was cool. And I think we retweeted it from the @NotYetAdults account, but it basically was the shirt we talked about last time where it's hey with 14 Ys and then it's Eric in tiny text. So like a little anime chibi Eric underneath. So
I just love that was kind of like, you said that sort of like as a joke, and then someone actually took time out of their day to be like, what would this actually look like? And then designed it.
We're famous on the internet, man. We have people who, no, it's really just Lucas is an awesome guy that likes doing stuff like that. So anyways, Luke, we really appreciate you, buddy, and we appreciate you listening to the podcast. It means the world to us. So
thanks, man.
Alrighty, well, Eric, I'm gonna plug all the accounts and stuff. Anything you want to get in before then?
Nope, I feel pretty satisfied.
Alrighty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 3 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. A reminder that we are all over the interwebs. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. It is Not Yet Adults everywhere. For Twitter and Instagram, it's all one word. For Facebook, it is not. So just search Not Yet Adults, spell it out, and you will find us. In terms of listening, we are on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, really any podcast service, Stitcher, I know we're on there. And those numbers could do a little bit better. They're actually gone up a lot since episode 1, but we would love your support. Anywhere you can listen, please subscribe, please download the podcast. It would mean the world to us. And for now, that's all we got. We'll be back with episode 4 this Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And until then, this has been Not Yet Adults.
Yes, thanks again for listening. Once again, I may sound like a broken record saying this every episode. Please share with your friends and family. Word of mouth is huge for these kinds of things.
Spray paint it on the water tower in your town. Instead of Save Ferris, just put save #NotYetAdults.
Exactly. And yeah, and I just love hearing my friends and family or people in my life saying, hey, I listened to your episode, and it's very cool to like have like these people I know that they like have heard something I made. It's very cool, and I'm sure Collin feels the same way. So thanks for listening, and we really appreciate you.
We do.